As the world rose from the ruins of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, attention has tilted to the upsurge of insecurity across the Gulf of Guinea. It didn't just start in 2020, but with this increase, rise in, kidnapping as well as, of course, piracy. That is why we're bringing that focus here on VSA. Welcome to the show. I'm Sulaiman. In 2020, according to the International Maritime Bureau, there were 84 ship attacks on the Gulf of Guinea. Now, these attacks saw 135 seafarers getting kidnapped for ransom in 22 separate incidents. Now, these numbers were 50% of what was experienced in 2018 and 2019, and was a 10% increase between 2019 and 2020. Whether COVID-19 has got anything to do about the security across the Gulf of Guinea is something we'll also try to unravel today on the show. But the Gulf of Guinea accounted for more than 95% of the kidnap for ransom at sea in the world. Now, these pirates usually take their hostages to the creeks in the Niger Delta region of Niger, where a ransom is negotiated. Loose ties among the nations involved have been identified as a critical reason for the existence of insecurity in the region, despite the presence of foreign organizations who have been forced to get private security firms for protection of their staff. The attacks have been incessant, well-organized, and spurious. Now, where's the Gulf of Guinea? That's a big question. Which countries are involved? Who are the most affected? Now, a 6,000-kilometer coastline that stretches all the way from Senegal to Angola is under heavy security threat. One of the most important shipping zones in the world, owing to its proximity to Europe and North America. It also has an abundance of natural resources, including almost 5% of the world's oil and 3% of the gas deposits in the world. Now, it is estimated that 20% of Europe's oil and gas come from the Gulf of Guinea. Some of the countries of the Gulf of Guinea are Liberia, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Togo, Benin Republic, Nigeria, Southern Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Sao Tome and Principe, Republic of Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, and even Angola. So on any day, there are at least 1,500 fishing vessels on the Gulf of Guinea, some of which are owned by countries who see fishing as a source of income. The security of the Gulf of Guinea is threatened by piracy and robbery at sea, kidnapping of seafarers, illegal fishing, smuggling, trafficking, and organized crime involving many nationals. And that's why we're looking at that today here on The Square. Joining me is the Senior Manager Security Niger Ports Authority, Dr. Ignatius Ikechukwu Uche, and of course, Dr. Hassan Kannenje, Director, Horn Institute for Strategic Studies. Gentlemen, welcome to VSA.
Thank you.
Let me start, by asking, let me start from Nairobi, Kenya. Dr. Kannenje, can you give us an insight into how the security of the Gulf of Guinea got breached and the possible, ways we can actually get nations out of the quagmire?
Sulaiman, thank you very much for the question. It is apparent that this problem didn't start yesterday. And I think what has allowed it to continue is lack of appropriate and effective counteraction, like what happened with regard to the Somali coast piracy. And in the wake, of course, weak governance structures, lack of legal framework to address piracy, increasing illegal fishing, and generally the inland conditions that exist in these countries, such that you're going to see the militancy within countries tends to spread over. And so what happened, for instance, in the Horn of Africa region was a proper, well-coordinated action by both local countries and countries from outside, of course, that have an interest in transit and whose business and commercial engagements are being affected, that has led what we see right now as minimum action by pirates and their affiliates.
You know, let me bring in Dr. Uche here. You know, this also affects Nigeria greatly. And for someone who's been in charge of security at some point, tell us how much of a struggle or much of a problem this has been for countries across the Gulf of Guinea, more so your country, Nigeria.
All right, thank you very much. Like you rightly said in your introduction, the Gulf of Guinea is very, very strategic for maritime activities within the region. And whatever affects that region affects all the countries that made up the Gulf of Guinea, Nigeria being one of them. Like you have rightly noted, a lot of illegal activities, unreported, incidents, unreported fishing activities are taking place within the Gulf of Guinea. And that is affecting the revenue base of these nations, and Nigeria inclusive. For example, in 2019 statistics, we are told that 120,000 barrels of oil are lost every day within this region. And you know the implication of this to a country that is dependent on oil and natural resources for their existence, especially countries where, the crude products are generated, but we still have scarcity of these products within the region. So it's been a problem. And we've had a lot of reports from the media, the print, the social media, and even the electronic media on the activities of these pirates and sea robbers taking place within the Gulf of Guinea region. But let me clearly state here that many a times we have interchangeably used the word piracy and sea robbery. There are two distinctions of these concepts. Piracy actually takes place within a country's, outside the country's economic exclusive zone, while the sea robbery takes place within a country's exclusive zone. So we need to differentiate between what is piracy and what is sea robbery attack. Of late, we've not had any piracy attack within the Nigerian ports, especially Lagos Port Complex and Tinkanala Complex, and also the ports within the eastern Nigeria. But we know that within the Gulf of Guinea region, we had pocket of cases of, attack on vessels at bat, which is what the Gringo is trying to address. Let me pause here for further questions.
We'll come back to you, Dr. Uche. Let me come back to Dr. Kannenje. Thank you very much, Dr. Uche, by the way, for actually giving us, a distinct definition of what piracy and sea robbery is. Dr. Kannenje, off the top of my head, I'm thinking that these sea robbers or pirates are more like experts, people who understand the terrain. And if they do, because you don't just get, I'll be at sea if I get on a ship or on a boat to go do some kind of criminal act. So how, some of these people, when they're caught, how do they truly get understanding of navigating, the sea? Are these people, some experts who have chosen to become, the bad guys?
Thanks, Sulaiman. These people make their livelihood from the sea and from robbery, pretty much. And when you decide that a certain trade is going to be a means of livelihood, most certainly you're going to get good at it. And so they just get good at it and they become better. Now, one thing that has also been missing that's allowed for that is, you see, part of what Dr. Uche did mention with regard to some lack, definitional or conceptual understanding of some of these terms, is also lack of a common understanding and common development of a legal framework within those countries that are affected. And as you rightly pointed out, it stretches all the way from Senegal to Central Africa to parts of Southern Africa. So in the absence of that common understanding, these people exploit the loopholes within governance structures, within the legal frameworks that makes it hard to actually prosecute them across states, for instance. And so you're going to find a lot of pirates who are caught or sea robbers, they're released, in part because there is not appropriate mechanism or framework of actually prosecuting these people. And in cases where it is, then it may simply be national. And so developing a regional framework of affected countries becomes critical because this is a problem that affects many countries. And so, yes, they've become experts because they've mastered a means of making a livelihood, and that has become a way to give them easy money. And it's not different from what has happened, in other parts of the world where there existed loopholes in an environment where states don't have a robust policy or sometimes the coast guard to be able to protect those costs. It has been exploited, over in history, and it's still being exploited today. And most recent years, Somalia coast, as I mentioned at the beginning, was one of the critical examples of what was happening when countries, for instance, are lacking a coordinated mechanism of actually dealing with the threat of piracy and sea robbery.
That's a big, issue you just raised now, talking about coordination across, African countries, across the Gulf of Guinea. And it would seem as if that the pirates and sea robbers have lashed onto that loophole. Dr. Uche, are we more challenged with pirates or sea robbers on the Gulf of Guinea?
Yes. Let me align myself with the position of Dr. Hassan about these criminal elements. Like the question you posed, they don't live in the water. They are also living on land. So whatever security architecture on land affects the security architecture on the sea. And they have capitalized on the weak governance and weak enforcement of the UNCLOS law with respect to prevention of unlawful acts against persons and against shipping. And this also have become an evolving, business. And they make a lot of money through ransom. And they kept on, continuing in these dastard acts. But let me tell you that piracy has been a challenge because it adds to the country's, economic well-being. It leads to, underdevelopment, loss of GDP. It also leads to, poor standard of living of the people. It has led to loss of lives of crew members and seafarers. So it's a challenge to the region, and it has to be addressed and addressed adequately. All the agencies that are responsible and all the initiatives of the United Nations, especially with respect to the UNCLOS law, should be effectively, implemented within the countries in these regions to ensure that at least vessels can transit this region that is the hub of maritime activities within Africa and, of course, even in the world. We are told that about 60% of world crude oils pass through this region. And of course, the importance of this region with respect to fishing activities, with respect to the mineral resources that are embedded in this region. Of course, a lot of untapped mineral resources like the hydrocarbons, diamonds are all in this region. So it's been a challenge. If the issue of piracy is not properly harnessed and addressed, we will continue to have these issues as a recurring decimal.
You know, that's why we're here, Dr. Uche and Dr. Hassan Kannenje, trying to see what the continent can do. But talking about what the continent can do, Hassan Kannenje, you recall the 2013 Yaoundé architecture that has the security framework of the Gulf of Guinea. How has that helped to solve these decade-long problems? What would you pinpoint as, that workable or working reason, or maybe otherwise, for that Yaoundé, meet?
Yes, I think that Cameroon arrangement, I would say, was aspirational. And what happens is we tend to stick with aspirations without actualizing them. Now, I think the onus is on the countries concerned to realize the spirit and the letter of that framework. This is something that has not been done. Neither have we been able, at least those countries, prioritized maritime security as a matter of national and regional security. I think there's a need for a paradigm shift, but also in putting in place structures that can be able to realize those aspirations and the intentions that informed that framework. Outside that, I think we're going to remain with a lot of instruments that are aspirational. They are some sort of a promissory note that is really never delivered. And I think there has to be a change. When 95% of all kidnappings are happening in one part of the world, then either God has abandoned that part, or just because humans were not doing enough. And I tend to believe that humans, we are not doing enough as people who live in this part of the world with regard to ensuring that we actually stop piracy and sea robbery in our region.
Dr. Uche, 2013 is so long a time for nations to aspire to solving, one, big problem that concerns all of them, isn't it?
Exactly. Like Dr. Hassan has said, we have good initiatives, but the major problem has been that of implementation, that enforcement. All these initiatives are good, and if well implemented, I am telling you, will address these problems. Within the region, there have been activities like the Obangame. To what extent has it been sustained, on annual basis, to ensure that these criminal elements are ward off our waters? There has also been initiatives like the Krimgo. We have also had the PIMOCA, the MOCA, the ECOWAS coming up with different types of initiatives. But they have not been a synergy from one of these initiatives to the other. But everybody becomes territorial. And we are trying to defend areas that are of concern to us, rather than tackling the problem holistically. Okay, so we have the Operation 30 Days at Sea, which is a baby of the police, the Interpol. And annually, these operations are organized with the view of going into the creeks and eliminating all the shanties and all the hideouts where these elements and all the, raids where these elements hide. But after the exercise, what happens? So my suggestion or recommendation is that there should be need for a synergy among all the countries that are within this region, and ensure that this problem is addressed once and for all. All the navies in these countries should have a town hall meeting where suggestions and ways of moving forward should be advocated. And also the issue of penalties for those that are caught must be looked at. There is quite little or nothing as regards to penalty or punishment for these criminal elements when they are caught, like Dr. Hassan said. Suffice to say that if you are caught as a stowaway today, the fine is less than $1. So people will just commit such crimes with impunity and then go back the next day. So we should have a holistic approach if we want the Gulf of Guinea to be, risk-free, so that vessels can transit this region without fear of molestation, fear of kidnap, fear of being taken hostage. And of course, the economic implication is that most of these vessels, as they are coming, they have a higher insurance to these countries in the region. And then a container that other people pay for maybe $1,000 for freight, but because you are passing through the Gulf of Guinea, you pay up to $1,800. And that adds to the high cost of living within this region. So I am actually using this forum to call for a holistic approach, to call for, a concerted effort, backed up. We can't address the problem in the Gulf of Guinea with politics. Until we eliminate politics out of the reality on ground, then we are not addressing the situation. Thank you.
I'm excited having both of you here, honestly, and I think the continent should be grateful having experts like yourself. Listening to Dr. Uche, he's been able to pinpoint some of the key reasons why the economy of these countries across the Gulf of Guinea, Dr. Hassan, are going into big problems. The higher the risk, the higher the insurance, and who pays at the end of the day? The citizens of these countries where such goods and even services will ultimately birth. Now, this brings us to some of the key things he's raised. He said something about 30 days at sea. And for any criminal, he'll be doing the counting. And as soon as you get to day 29, he's waiting and he says, hooray, they're gone. So let's come back for the big party of criminality. So how can we sustain these? Because he said something about countries, which you also alluded in your opening submission, the countries across these, the Gulf, must come together to have some kind of concerted effort to stopping this. Is it something too big a thing for these countries to do, knowing full well that it affects the economy of their country?
Sulaiman, the surest way of changing bad behavior is to increase the cost of misbehavior. And we have to increase the cost of maritime criminality significantly. And we have seen it work elsewhere on the continent, and that is around the Horn of Africa. That is the Red Sea and the Gulf of Eden. I think we saw it for many years. That is number one. Number two, it's important that governments affected work with communities that live along the shores. These people, as Dr. Uche mentioned earlier, they come from land before they get into the sea. And so working with the communities and live on the shores, I think, is going to be critical. They know who these elements are, but then also trying to invest in them to improve their livelihoods. We know there is a great deal of illegal fishing that has denied some of these communities who live along the shores their critical livelihoods, and therefore finding criminality as the easiest way to make some money. There is sometimes just complete abandonment of the communities that live along these coastlines. But also critically important, you're going to find that a lot of coast guards are not sufficiently developed or equipped or financed to be able to collect intelligence, to monitor, and to sustain missions of dealing with criminality at sea. And so if we come together, for instance, as countries affected, and we approach it purposefully, using also the help from the partners. Of course, we know that a lot of some of these resources that come from the Gulf of Guinea, of course, end up in the West and, of course, in the East. Of course, these countries have a stake, but then the continent has to take the lead. The countries affected have to take the lead to be able to say, well, this is what we're doing now. Because you're also benefiting from this, I think we're going to need your help. I'm sure NATO and even the EU and the United States may be critically interested in that, in part because of the reliance of the oil from this part of the world. And so Africa has to take the lead in this, and countries concerned, as Dr. Uche mentioned, you have to remove politics from it. It's not about politics, it's about policy. And it's about livelihoods of real people and real citizens who live along the Gulf of Guinea.
Let me quickly ask here, starting with you, Dr. Uche, some of these sea robbers and pirates, are there any from outside the continent who come within that, Gulf to, commit crime?
Substantially, we know that we have the issue of porous borders, and that cannot be completely eliminated from, people crossing from one continent to the other. And then with the organized crimes that are going on around the world, and even transatlantic, trafficking of humans, we can't rule that out. But suffice to say that these problems can be addressed. If we have, intelligence sharing mechanism among all the law enforcement agencies within this region, and those that are, in charge of maritime shipping and the operators, we'll be able to address this problem. I also want to use this opportunity to call for the establishment of a regional port facility security forum or stakeholders forum, where intelligence can be easily shared among members in the forum. And then we have a platform where intel should be shared with respect to, threats to either a vessel or to a platform or to even the countries within this region. So if we can do this, I know this call has been made to ECOWAS in one of the programs I was privileged to attend. I advocated for this because I know the importance of this when it comes to sharing intelligence. And then let's have a network of intelligence within the maritime security operators in this region. And then we'll be able to make, substantial progress. And also, we need to ensure that there are established platforms for patrol. You can't, like Dr. Hassan, you can't leave the sea unmonitored on patrol. And then you want, there is a popular saying for the rich men to sleep with their eyes closed, with their two eyes closed. The poor must be snoring. Okay? So if we want to address this problem, look, the sea must be on constant, regular patrol. The presence, in fact, that's what we call psychological deterrence. If the navies are always at sea, among all the countries, I'm telling you, substantially, it is a cost-effective project to keep them at sea. But we should have the willpower to do that and provide resources, equip them with we have the resources, we have what it to do that. But many times we let it and then we feel that the problem will fizzle out. Let me say that the problem is multiplying, is increasing. If you check the statistics, is the pendulum is still going very, very high. And unless it is checked, it gets to a point where vessels will not be able to cross the Gulf of Guinea, like we were having in the Gulf of Aden, and then of course in Somalia. So we don't want it to get to that extent.
Well, anyway, we'll take a moment when we come back. But before that, I'd like to say thanks to you, Dr. Uche. You just increased, my collection of African proverbs there. If the rich can sleep with both eyes closed, it then means that the poor are snoring. That's a key one going into my books. So Dr. Hassan, Kannenje, and Dr. Uche will be back. And when we come back, we'll be looking at possible solutions. I still don't understand why Dr. Uche is retired. We need him on the continent. We're still looking at this big issue across the Gulf of Guinea. As it stands, nations of the Gulf of Guinea have worked hard to set up centers to enable better security of the waterways. But as both guests have highlighted, it looks like paying lip service to all efforts. So multinational maritime coordination centers were set up with no with nations set into zones based on their geographical locations. Nigeria, for instance, as well as Benin Republic and Togo, we are set at Zone E, yes, while Ghana, Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea are at Zone F. Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon are at Zone D, with plans to have more centers involving nations. Now, these countries are expected to send their respective navies to protect the security of their zones. This has been very difficult, but as highlighted by my guest, it looks like they lack coordination amongst the countries. Now, millions of dollars have been spent on maintaining the security framework of the Gulf of Guinea, but with no great result. The Nigerian government loses 150,000 barrels of oil daily. Yes, you heard that, daily to oil thieves. And this amounts to 2.5 billion naira daily and another 900 billion per annum. Now, the international shipping community have been forced to sometimes call on their home governments to help. One of such examples was seen when the Danish Navy were found providing security on the Gulf of Guinea. The reason isn't far-fetched. Maersk, the world's biggest shipping company, is based in the Danish capital of Copenhagen. And that's why countries like Denmark had to come protect one of its own key business. Now, we'll still have Dr. Hassan Kannenje, who is the director Horn Institute for Strategic Studies, and of course, Dr. Ignatius Ikechukwu Uche, who is a retired senior manager security Nigeria Ports Authority, with me on the square today, preparing solutions to what the conversation is about. Let me start with you, Dr. Kannenje. Now we're trying to look at solutions, but before then, what's the implication of having the Navy of a foreign government on the territorial waters of another country?
Well, part of the implication of that, it's if it's something that has been agreed upon, then that is something normal. However, if it's not, of course, then it communicates a type of weakness of the country in question, and when it comes to this, inaction is not an option. And because of inaction of those countries, then countries whose citizens are being threatened, they are left with no choice but to take unilateral action. And that is one of the reasons why I think the countries that are affected by this menace have to find a way of working together. So foreign navies or foreign armies do not have to come to their shores. And sometimes they may not exactly have the best interests. We understand international politics, how it works. However, those countries' naval forces cannot work alone. I think it's important to consider working with those foreign partners who may have more experience, especially in dealing with piracy, or at least more experience at sea, and they may have more sophisticated equipment that can aid developing countries on the continent address the problem of piracy and sea robbery.
I bring in Dr. Uche here quickly, and Dr. Uche, well, I understand. I think I understand. I lost the connection to Dr. Uche, so we'll wait to have him sign on again. So still with you here, Dr. Hassan Kannenje. Some of those issues raised, and if you look at it, coordination amongst countries very key here. And one wonders if Denmark, for instance, will come all the way, knowing full well some of those key things you highlighted earlier on before we went on that break, which affects the economy of these countries. If a European country can come all the way to protect its own business interest, what is wrong with Africa?
Well, part of it is because we sometimes I think, part of the challenge in Africa is we get so consumed with the small politics domestically that we forget to look at the big picture when it comes to national interest and regional interest and continental interest, so to speak. And so one thing that is going to be critical is there has to be a discussion on the real threat that is posed by this to the economies and livelihoods, because communities are losing livelihoods because of sea robbery and piracy. Governments are losing revenue that is necessary to grow those economies and to give their people, raise people's sense of living. And so the continent has to look at itself and ask itself questions that do we have always to wait to see other people come and fix our problems? Or do we have capacity, which I believe we do, and as Dr. Uche has mentioned, that we have capacity. One thing that's been lacking is the will and the determination, and sometimes I would say the competent wisdom to be able to work together in ways that can address the mutual threats and mutual and find mutual solutions to common problems.
Well, I think I'm happy to have you back, Dr. Uche. Well, for a moment, we missed you, and we're good to have you back. We're looking at some of the key things. I had this conversation earlier while you were away with Hassan, and it has to do with the Danish government that had its navy around the Gulf of Guinea to protecting its own interest, which is one of the biggest shipping lines, talking about Maersk. And I asked the question, why is it that Africa, whose also its interest is also affected by activities of criminals across the Gulf, haven't actually taken, these countries haven't taken the same, bite, the same might, the same seriousness to stopping these criminals?
Right. Thank you very much. You don't know the value of what you have until you lose it. We have said here that the Gulf of Guinea is full of naturally endowed mineral resources. And this is why foreign countries have been attracted. The European Union, the US, Germany, Denmark, all these countries are very much interested in what happens within the Gulf of Guinea because of the potentials that are embedded there. So I think it should be a wake-up call to countries within this region to see that God has graciously endowed us with these resources, and we are not utilizing it. For me, I don't see anything wrong if your house is not clean and somebody comes to say, look, this house must be clean for all of us to live together. Because shipping is a global business. It's an international business. It's a global supply chain. Whatever happens to any vessel coming to this region affects to the same vessel going to Europe, going to America and Asia. So I think it should be a wake-up call to countries in this area. But let me also add that if we are addressing the problem of insecurity within the Gulf of Guinea, we must not shy away from addressing the problem of unemployment. The government must take the bull by the horns to address this, galloping unemployment rate within the region. Not only that, we should also look at having what we call maritime, security trust fund among the regions, such that all the operators can be contributing maybe $1 or say five naira, like the case may be, depending on the currency, in that trust fund, maybe on a monthly basis. At the end, it will be used for this security of this region. We should not also shy away from spending huge amount of money to protect this naturally endowed infrastructure. I learned that, I think was it in 2015, Japan spent up to $180 billion just to purchase aircraft, purchase speedboats, purchase, patrol vans, and all the maritime gadgets, the informational technology equipment to ensure that when there is a threat to any vessel, then there'll be a prompt response. But the question is, what is the response time of attack to a vessel within the region? So we must really come up with all these programs to ensure that at least let us be seen to be addressing the problem. I know the problem is overwhelming. I know the problem is huge, but they are insurmountable.
You know, let me bring in Hassan here. Dr. Kannenje, you know, is it a case of the continent's navies, you know, being helpless? Because the insecurity is already affecting returns and earnings of the local ports authority in the different African countries.
I think it's less, while in many respects it may be true, it's less to do with the helplessness of the African navies and more to do with not prioritizing maritime security as a matter of national and regional security. Because if we do that, then we're going to make sufficient investments in that. And Dr. Uche alluded to something that perhaps because we do not appreciate the value of what we have in the Gulf of Guinea. If we do, I think there's going to be a move towards investing more in maritime security and in developing the maritime resources that a lot of countries are lacking. And right now, there's increased appetite, of course, to get those resources. And so the helplessness is just because, frankly, we do not sufficiently appreciate and even understand the value of maritime security as it relates to our own country's economic development and the future development of our people.
You know, Dr. Uche, you know, you said something about, you know, countries pulling, you know, resources together, something like getting a pool where they can task, you know, each other and say, we need to put something away for building, you know, maybe a network that can help us put a stop to issues like this. You know, for instance, some nations may come up with, you know, such excuse that we're not rich enough to provide security on our territorial waters. And if you're not rich enough, you should also be rich enough to contribute maybe quarterly, monthly, or even yearly to that pool.
Yes, I said this with all sense of sincerity because security is a big business. And if you want to allow your business to strive, you must invest in security. You cannot pay lip service to security and then you want to get the revenue. It's not possible. Two of them cannot go together. You must address the issue of insecurity. If all the countries within the region can come together and agree on just stipends, that a lot of people will be willing, if this thing will be handled, you know, judiciously and with integrity. It's not a call for maybe somebody to enrich himself. You understand? These are some of the problems we have. And at the end of the day, we have a good beginning, but continuing becomes a problem. So we must call for a stakeholders meeting. Like I said earlier, we must have a joint port facility security officers forum that will cut across all certified port security officers within these regions. We have about 20 commercial ports within the Gulf of Guinea region, excluding the offshore facilities and others, statistically. So you can see it's a huge market. And that is why you see the US, despite all the threats in that, they still send their Coast Guards to come and see what goes on because they want to protect their interests. The Chevron, the Shell, and these are oil companies belonging to US government. So they must see that these things are protected. I know if we have such a call, other countries, even outside the region, should be able to support the initiatives by funding it. And then we'll be able to address the issue of complaint from the navies. We don't have enough fuel. We don't have enough gunboats. We don't have enough patrol equipment. We don't have enough radar or the gadgets that are needed to track all these criminal elements. And we have all it takes to do that. There are technological devices that can pinpoint pirates right inside this room. So why can't we deploy those technologies and then use them? I've also called for the use of intelligence. We must share intelligence. And of course, intelligence not shared is as good as useless. And I believe in prompt and proactive sharing of intelligence. I'm an advocate of proactive security, not reactive. Don't start crying when the head is off. And that is why we are calling for all the governments that are concerned and all the agencies and all the countries to come together. Let us address this problem. It's a teething problem, but like as I said, it is insurmountable. If we make good use of the potentials we have, good policies, good legislations, and of course, good administration.
Just give me a moment, Dr. Hassan. I'll come to you. I just want Dr. Uche to follow up on this. What's Nigeria's role at the moment as the most affected country amongst those nations, and how can discussions around improving security on the Gulf of Guinea be driven, knowing full well Nigeria has the Nigeria Ports Authority, and it also has the NIMASA, the Nigeria Maritime Security Agency?
Well, thank you very much. Nigeria is the center of gravity when it comes to the Gulf of Guinea. And of course, we are also the most or the worst hit when such incidents occur, probably because we are import-dependent nation, and as well as oil-producing nation that depends on importation for our oil. So it's a real paradox for us. But let me say that Nigeria is not sleeping over it. There have been a lot of initiatives. There are joint MOU between the Nigerian Navy and the NIMASA, like you rightly pointed, in ensuring that these problems are addressed. And of course, I am also aware that helicopters have been acquired to patrol the waters, to ward off criminal elements. We also have gunboats that have been purchased. And the issue is proper utilization of these resources. Lots of money is being spent by Nigerian Ports Authority on annual basis to acquire patrol boats, to equip the Navy to patrol the waters. And a lot of trainings have been going on, a lot of equipment are being purchased, a lot of tracking devices, the long-range tracking devices are being installed with a view to detecting vessels that are not with their AIS and all that, and ensure that illegal activities are reduced. We can't eliminate them. Anywhere in the world, we can't have 100%. But we are saying, let's reduce it to at least a minimum of 5% minimum level of risk of being in business. But suffice to say that we are not yet there. But not to lose hope, we have left Egypt, but we are not yet in the promised land. Thank you.
Okay, let me come to Hassan. He will be able to tell us if we here, the continent, has left Egypt and heading towards the promised land. Tell us what exactly you and your team are doing at the Horn Institute for Strategic Studies, because these are key things. Sometimes we want to see some research work, some analysis, some working from experts like yourself that governments across the continent should be able to pick up and run with and say, yes, this is truly a working document, a working policy fit for the continent.
Yeah, thanks, Sulaiman. Yes, one of the things, of course, we're doing at the Han Institute is to try and do some studies that looks at the extent of such crimes, especially maritime crimes, has the impact that has on the economies of the countries affected, but generally on the continent, and even the ability of countries affected to invest, to attract investment and even FDI flows. You can see there is a connection. Countries that are mostly affected by piracy, they are not only getting less revenue, but they also tend to have some militant activity, on land, not just at sea. And that, by and large, affects the ability for those countries to attract investment or sustain investment, but also the ability of those countries to exploit the natural resources that they have. And there's also a relationship between that and increased poverty among the population that live along the coastlines. Now, this is critical because it's virtually impossible for us to control crime at sea if communities that live along the coastlines are poor or impoverished. Those are structural challenges that, if not addressed, then fighting piracy becomes, and sea robbery becomes a pipe dream. Now, it is true that we've left Egypt, but we are not in Canaan yet. We are still hoping and praying that we have enough sufficient water to get to Canaan. But for us to be able to be answered, we have to move away from rhetoric and start addressing the reality. We need to move away from the politics of piracy to the policies of countering piracy and sea robbery.
Well, I think it's a fine place for us to leave it, but I wouldn't leave here without asking Dr. Uche this question. It's a personal question. Dr. Uche, are you really and truly, honestly retired?
Yes, I'm retired, but I am not tired.
Because I can see the energy.
Answers you succinctly.
I can see the energy, so we don't want you retired. We need you even at the Horn Institute to join Dr. Hassan there. Honestly, Africa needs everyone to be on this. Gentlemen, it's been a delight.
With all pleasure, I make myself available at any time, any day. Please call on me and I will respond positively.
I'm excited, no doubt. There is a gulf between peace and insecurity in nations of the Gulf of Guinea, and it is a necessity to bring Africans to the know about the problems faced in that region. We have barely scratched the surface, so we'll keep the conversation coming in the days ahead. Thank you for being such a nice company, Dr. Uche and Kannenje. And to you, my viewer, many thanks for watching. I'll be here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.